nahuli po, no? Pinakahuli, pakisara po yung pinto. Salamat. At lahat na mahuli at mahuli pa, at pakisara niyo po yung pinto. No? Yung nahuli po, close door po. Salamat.
All right, welcome to the Nazareth village. My name's Anthony, and I'll be your guide today. The tour is about an hour and 15 minutes, but of course we're a big group, so we'll see how we go. If you're wondering where I'm from England originally, but my wife is from Nazareth. She's an Arab Christian, Arab background believer, and so let me give you an introduction. We have 3 rooms inside, then we'll take you outside. So the Nazareth village, it's a living history village. It's built on a real farm, has a first century wine press, terrace farming, water channels and watchtower. And it's trying to recreate, of course, what Nazareth was like at the time of Jesus. So you'll see people dressed in first century clothing, our villagers, involved in different trades and handicrafts. You'll see buildings built in a first century style with first century building materials, a synagogue, an olive press and some houses. And you're welcome to take photos and video as we go for your own personal use. If you did want them for business use, commercial use, we'd ask you to fill in a form with the office first. Now, it's part of a larger Christian non-profit organisation called the Nazareth Trust, and I'll explain a bit more later on. Now, why are we in Nazareth, first of all? What's special about Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Okay, the answer is yes. Of course, the Lord Jesus lived and grew up in Nazareth. Now, there were 2 main events in the New Testament based in Nazareth. The first, when the angel Gabriel came to the young Jewish woman, Miriam, of course Mary in English, told her she would have a son. His name would be Yeshua, Jesus in English. And the second event, when he was about 30 years old, he came into the synagogue in Nazareth. He read from the scroll of the prophet Isaiah. Hopefully you know which prophet I'm talking about. And we'll speak more about that event when we get to the synagogue later. Now, we've done lots of research here on first century living to try and give you a real first century experience. Usually, I know you're living and working here, but usually when people are visiting Israel as tourists, they're looking for a special spiritual or religious experience. Sometimes it can be disappointing because, of course, in Israel there's history everywhere, isn't it? Everywhere you look and step, there's history. And the dead stones of history. So instead of the dead stones of history, dusty ruins, we want to bring you, instead of the dead stones, the living stones today of the life and the teachings of the Lord Jesus and what that first century world looked like. How did people live together and work together? And how did the Lord Jesus connect his teaching to the people living in that first century world? So I'm hoping today your understanding of the teaching of the Lord Jesus will be transformed as we go around our tour. This is a photo of the land we're going to walk around. This is the building we're in now. We're going to walk around the land like this, a bit up the hill, then back into the building where the shop is, where we started the tour at the top of the stairs. And this land was part of farmland that would have surrounded the original village of Nazareth. This is where the original village would be, where the centre of Nazareth is today, the old city, the old market area, where the Catholic Basilica is as well. That's where the Lord Jesus would have lived with his family. And it's about 500 metres from the farm here. Most certainly Jesus would have known the farm. Maybe he was involved in harvest celebration. And this road divides up the farmland today. There was ruins and watchtowers found this side of the road. We won't get to this side. So we've built a replica here of a watchtower. We'll see it a bit later. This is the Nazareth Hospital and the School of Nursing over here. These are also part of this Christian non-profit organisation. I'll point those out later on and explain a bit more about the history. Now, we know they were growing grapes here at the time of Jesus because during the 1990s, during digs, excavation on the land here, this original wine press was found. And we know this was a working wine press at the time of Jesus because pottery shards, pieces of pottery, dating from the early Roman period were found during those digs. So we know this was a working vineyard and wine press at the time of Jesus. Now, we know they would have also taken their sandals off to press the grapes on the wine press with their bare feet. Has anyone been on this tour before? Raise your hand.
Meron daw.
Okay. Why did they take their shoes off and press the grapes with their bare feet? Why did they take their shoes off and press the grapes with their skin? Do you know?
No.
Okay, I'll answer the question later when we get to the wine press. Okay, keep thinking. Now the terraces, they were found in ruins and repaired here. We've got a model of a terrace here. And they were made of layers of soil. There's a chalk layer underneath the topsoil. That would produce a sealant to the water and therefore a self-irrigation system. It would evenly water all the terraces. The rainfall in the winter months would come through the topsoil, hit the chalk, then flow out of the stones of the terrace down to the next terrace and so on down the hillside. And of course it protects the topsoil from being washed away in the winter rainstorms. Now we're going to our second room. This big door, it's not from the 1st century, it's from the Ottoman period. Maybe 200 years old, has a small inner door for people. So a soldier would have to get off his horse to come through. They could defend themselves on the inside if they needed to. The big wide door would be for animals like camels and wide loads. Now, maybe it reminds you of the teaching of the Lord Jesus. He said there's a broad, wide way, and there's many people on that, but that leads to destruction, to death. And there's a narrow way, and there's few people on that, but that leads to everlasting life. Now, we're obviously a very big group today. We've got to go through this door, but don't do that in your spiritual life, okay? Go through the narrow door, the Lord Jesus.
Kaso malayo tayo masyado.
I-stop mo din panibago.